Page Punchers!
How's it going, super friends? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are looking at the McFarlane Toys Page Punchers 78 Superman action figure. This figure is not actually based off of the movie. It's really based off of the 6-issue miniseries Superman 78. Anyway, the figure comes in your typical Page Puncher bubble packaging. And the back, you have the front of the comic book that comes with the figure. All out of the packaging, it comes with everything that you see here. Christopher Reeve Supes comes with a total of 10 interchangeable optional hands. He's even got a hand holding the green crystal from the Superman movies. And of course, what McFarlane Page Puncher action figure would be complete unless it came with a trading card? The back, as always, has that short bio data file. For those of you who have been living under a rock and have no idea who Superman is, you can pause to read this if you'd like to. And of course, you get the comic book as well. This is a reprint of issue number 1 of Superman 78, loaded with fantastic Christopher Reeve Superman artwork. And here we can see that he's fighting Brainiac in issue number 1. I highly suggest that you pick up the graphic novel of this. You're missing out if you haven't read it yet. And now we'll move on to the figure. So let's just get all this stuff out of the way and have a look at just the Chris Reeve Superman figure by himself. So because this figure is not based off of the movie, but it's rather based off a continuation that takes place in a comic book, they've tried to emulate that comic book look by putting black shading on the figure. And, you know, if you really like this kind of thing, then this might be for you. I am still undecided as to whether I like it or not. I think it's literally everywhere. It's on the tip of the boots there. They've outlined the edges, the rims of his boot. It's clearly on his legs, the shadowing on his trunks, on his midriff. If I pull his articulation back, you can see he's got some here in the torso, the chest. They've outlined Superman's S right here. And the only thing that I really am going to be nitpicky about is you can see right in here, there's supposed to be a little triangle. It's the check mark of his S. And I wish that they put that in there. I wish that they actually did the S properly. Otherwise, what is the point of this lump that's sticking down here? You know, it's the it's that first kind of checky thing, the check marky thing, and it's not there. So that's something that I feel like they could have done better. However, in comparison to the old man Supes from the Anti-Monitor wave, they actually did manage to get paint on the back of the belt on his trunks here, which is fantastic, and as it should be. One of the major differences you will find between this version and the movie version is the neckline. The cape and the neckline, the way that it fits together, are actually slightly different. And I'll compare them when I get my hands on the actual movie figure, and you'll see that they're actually different. As for the facial sculpt, the portrait of Chris Reeve, at this point, I'm not entirely sure if they made a new head sculpt for him or just put the cell shading, the shadowing on the existing neck and face portrait. Well, I know that the neck is new, but on the face portrait, I'm not sure which way they've gone, so I'll be able to let you know when I get my hands on the movie one. I think it is pretty good as far as trying to make it look like a comic book version of Christopher Reeve's face. No super complaints there. Would I rather the figure itself not be cell shaded? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, the cell shading, the shadowing is never something I'm super into. You know, choosing to outline the jaw of the figure and put the dimple in the chin. You know, that's not typically something that I'm into, but I know there might be some of you at home that are really into this kind of thing. The good thing about this bright red wired cloth Christopher Reeve cape is that you get that emblem on the back. A nice bright yellow Superman, correct to Christopher Reeve and his suit design, his S design, correct to that version of an S on the back of his cape. I think that is fantastic. And it's even got the triangle right here that is supposed to be on the front of his uniform on that S that just didn't make it. The only other thing that I think is kind of weird about this figure is that this shoulder here, right, you can see how the socket moves around on the inside and does what it's supposed to, and it actually recesses inside of the body quite well. The other socket is actually a little big for the hole. It doesn't properly recess. It's tight and it falls out all the time. So I'm not sure if I'm going to have to Dremel on the inside of the body, or maybe the sockets are different sizes. I will have to rectify that situation on account of they're just not really super even. As for this Superman's body proportions, I think they did a pretty good job of keeping him more realistic to Christopher Reeve's body when he was in the best shape of his life, in comparison to him looking just like an all-out pipsqueak or a beefcake comic book character. I think this is a pretty good happy medium for, creating a realistically proportioned version of Christopher Reeve in the prime of his life, in comic book form. And I know there are some out there that really think that this body is a reuse of the Old Man Soup's body from Crisis. And you'll have to forgive the fact that I'm bringing in a custom version to show you the body parts, because my other version's up on the shelf, and if I pull it off, it'll be dominoes, it'll be a whole big mess, and I'll be responsible for a giant crisis in the DC universe. So I brought out my custom version just to show you the body, so you can kind of get the point here. This is not the same body. These are not the same abs section, not the same chest and torso. They are not the same arms. The biceps are different. The shoulders are different. I think there might be some reuse. If I stretch his arm out straight, there might actually be some reuse when it comes to the forearm. That's possible. And I suspect that because there's like a wrinkle at the end of his sleeve that is the same on each one. The legs are definitely not the same, and the boots also are completely different. And you'll have to forgive the fact I don't have the same trunks, the correct trunks on this Superman, but the trunks are also different. Even the feet are different. You can tell because these are the feet of the previous Superman, and there's no line down the front. And these are the feet of the current one, and there is a newly sculpted line that goes down the front of each boot to match the stitch lines in his boots. Now, there are only a few comparisons I'm going to make to the Chris Reeve Superman figure here, and that is I've got the NECA Chris Reeve Superman, the Pipsqueak Superman I like to call him, just on account of, him just being so, especially his arms, so skinny and spindly. It was a good figure for the time, but I'm glad that we're getting newer versions of the character that are updated. Perhaps in some ways not as detailed, but definitely, I think, more in scale with what I would like to see in a Chris Reeve Superman figure. Got to admit, though, the way that they did the cloth goods cape on this Superman was sick. How they actually tucked it in to the neckline of the rubber suit here on top of the plastic body. That was a fantastic way of doing it. I also wanted to bring in my Action Comics 1000 Superman, just so you could see how much bigger this Reeve Superman figure is. Like, he's a big figure. He's a big boy. And yes, I changed the heads. I gave him Smiling Soup's head, and my friend actually managed to cut the teeth out, and he just looks like he's smiling. And being that he's a bigger figure, when you pose him next to Batman here, Keaton Batman, you're going to find that Christopher Reeve dwarfs him. And finally, for some strange reason, I am curious as to how tall he is compared to this Captain America figure, because I always saw him as being quite a large figure. Wow, he even makes Captain America look just a little bit short. So this is a very tall, quite large Superman figure. So being that it's a new sculpt and primarily a new figure, I think we need to check out his articulation. So let's do that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find out if he's going to be able to get into a good flight pose. And so I'm going to check the head. And the head, does not go back very far for looking at where he's going in the sky, which means he's going to bash into airplanes and stuff like that. Now, he does have the rounded joint there in the torso, and of course he's got a full 360 rounded joint in the waist. So what he doesn't have in the head, he can kind of make up for with the body. That's a lot of bending. I know that would be very uncomfortable, but you know, you can sort of fudge it and get away with it. I would like to see a little bit more articulation with the head, though. And the torso is quite articulated. It goes forward a little bit better than some McFarlane figures, not as far as I might like, but it still is quite articulated. And the waist is too, it's just tight. That's the nature of the waists of a lot of these figures. They will get a full motion, but it is kind of tight. Of course, we have the arms, and they got the socket. As you can see, they have the rounded hinge. Chris Reeve has a bicep swivel and double jointed elbows, and I always like to check and see what I can get. That's not bad. That's all right. And then we have, as can be clearly seen, a gigantic shaped rounded hinge in the wrist there. That's a big boy. And that offers, geez, plenty of fist bumping, face punching action. Man, that is very articulated. And the fist, of course, is on a peg, so it's going to spin around for all of your fisty spinny needs. Then we have down here, what does he have below the trunks? Well, out that far, forward that much, not bad, back that much, and does he have, oh please, does he have any of the golden thigh articulation? Oh yeah, he's got some. Not as much as I might like. Oh geez, that's always the case. That you gotta do better. Needs a bit more of that kind of articulation to get him into some of those poses. But this is the McFarlane groin. We are used to seeing his style of articulation for the legs, and this is actually pretty good. Like, he could put his legs up quite far, and the rubber trunks just kind of move out of the way. And you got those double jointed knees right there, and they crunch up super nice. And then we have our ankles, and the ankles, as you can see, are shaped sort of rounded hinges that, of course, also have a pivot inside of the boot with, say it with me now, toe articulation. So now that we've came to the end of everything that I would generally talk about in an action figure review, what do I think about this Page Punchers Chris Reeve Superman 78 based on the comic book action figure? I actually like it more than I thought I was going to, because generally I don't like the black sort of cell shading, the shadowing. I still may remove it with acetone and just go with the basic figure. At this point, though, I'm not entirely sure. I definitely like it. I mean, this is a neat little Superman offering, and those of you who read the comic or are just Reeve Superman fans in general will probably want to pick this up because, yeah, it's pretty good. Anyway, that's all for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you with the next one. Have a super awesome DC day, everybody, and take care.